The thoughts and opinions on Just Some Podcast are of the hosts and guests and do not represent the views of organizations that employ them or they volunteer for. They are also not responsible for spontaneous black holes or nuclear wars that may occur. You have been warned.
Welcome, everybody, to a fun-filled, exciting, and special edition of Just Some Podcast. This is Tom.
This is Ben. It is special because we're doing kind of a breaking news type episode, hoping to kind of quell some of the hysteria out there.
Yes, as you may or may not have guessed by now, we're going to be talking about the COVID-19 virus infection, pandemic, boogeyman spreading disease, whatever it's called by the point that you read, good Lord, that you hear this podcast is what we're going to be calling it. So let's be fair to identify it right off the bat. When we say COVID-19, which is what Ben and I have been using, we're speaking about what is most widely known as the Wuhan coronavirus, the novel coronavirus. There's a bunch of other terms for it I'm sure people out there are using, but the most specific identifier, especially through the CDC and World Health Organization, is COVID-19. So that's just what we have chosen to use.
Plus, it's kind of fun to say it to the Come On Eileen sound, COVID-19. Yeah, see.
That meme was hilarious, by the way. I liked it.
Yeah.
And it's right. Once you do that, you're like, oh, yeah. I hear it.
It's the only way you hear it now. Yeah. At least that's how it works for me. I think one of the first things that I want to address, Tom, is the meme going around Facebook that's the picture of the bottle of coronavirus immunization for cattle and people saying, well, this is the government conspiracy because, the government's out to get us and this is how they're going to kill us is with COVID-19 and this has been around forever. No. So the actual coronavirus itself is a large family of viruses.
Correct.
In humans, they generally cause respiratory infections like the common cold. They have caused some more severe infections, but this particular strain that is causing immediate concern is, of course, the COVID-19. That's because it has mutated into a strain that we have not seen yet, which is why we have some of the concerns that we have out there.
Also, since it is this new strain, it is moving through people very quickly. There's not a lot of inherent immunity within the community. Wow, see how that all rhymed? Didn't even plan that.
Yeah.
So since none of that existed, this stuff is moving like wildfire. Though I can tell you when the initial, oh my God, started just a couple weeks ago, in areas that have already been hard hit, such as China, not that it's dangerous, I'm not trying to make light of any of this, but we have already seen a plateau in cases. So when you see some of the information that shows these large graphs with these vertical spikes, be aware that in areas that have already been hit, they're already starting to see plateaus after a period of time. So there is a regulation that we are used to seeing with viral infections, that this is following a similar path. So don't drink all the Kool-Aid just yet about what is going on. I think we should set the premise right off the bat, Ben, that we don't think anybody should make light of this or take this lightly. However, the point of this short episode is to give some information to healthcare workers, the public, and I guess make light a little bit of the people that are causing a pandemic out of fear over this COVID-19 infection. Yeah. And so give some facts. It's really what we wanted to do. So knowing all that, I think it's time that let's just give a little background about what we know about the COVID-19 so far. Maybe that's a good place to start.
I think that's a good place to start. Yeah.
So as of today, March 10th, And honestly, like we said before, this is a new type of viral infection. So these numbers are going to be probably very different by the time you are listening to this. But as of today, the CDC is reporting 110,000 cases around the world. And within the United States, we are currently sitting at around 500 positive confirmed cases and 34 deaths.
And the majority of those deaths, because I mean, that number does sound concerning. But when you look at the majority of those deaths come in one particular area, which was a long-term care facility that was hit by this virus. So I'm not saying that the numbers aren't correct, because they are, but it's kind of got an asterisk by the side of it, I would think.
Well, and honestly, that is some of the really good information I think we are getting to for the people that are uninformed about this infection, because you are absolutely correct. While there are some deaths associated with this, there is actually the World Health Organization and the CDC have kind of identified a magic number, and that's my term, not theirs. So let's be clear about that, because I'm sure somebody at the CDC would shit their pants if somebody called up asking how they came up with that. But here's a little more information. So that's some of the United States and worldwide information. Based on China alone, they're looking at around 70,000 cases. That's where the vast majority of the cases are, which is also why it's called the Wuhan coronavirus, is because, again, this is within the coronavirus family, and it was first identified in Wuhan, and I'm sure I'm butchering that name, China. So there you go. Around 80% of all the cases within China and outside of China are considered extremely mild to almost asymptomatic. Like, some of the patients did not even know they had an infection when they were first identified. That's right. 80%.
And some of those numbers come because of the way that China handled the screening and the testing of large portions of the population, which we're just not seeing in the United States right now, because it's not as prevalent right now, and because we don't have the ability to test millions of people, despite what certain members of legislative branches happen to say.
Yes. Again, this is going to be an awfully difficult episode since we are politically neutral on this show. It's going to be kind of hard to avoid some of that, because let's just be clear about this. There have been some political gaffes, political misinformation, and political mishandling worldwide, not just with the United States. Let's be clear about that. Of some of this has been handled. So there may be times where we're like, we don't know how to say this. So whatever. We're not trying to hurt anyone's feelings. We're just trying to get some facts. So yeah, so that's one of the advantages, I don't know if that's the correct term, to being a communist government like in total regime such as China, where they can literally block off a 9 million person city and quarantine it and said, no one can come or go, and we're going to test every person in the city. Obviously, that would not fly in the United States. Like, imagine if they went to Philadelphia and said, okay, Philadelphia is now quarantined. Like, what? Yeah. You can't quarantine an entire... Houston, Texas is now quarantined. You can't do that. Well, China can, and they did. And so what they found was, after they tested all those people, is that even the people that had it didn't know they had it. So let's be real. 80% of the people that have this are probably going to have mild upper respiratory infection symptoms. We're talking fever, body aches, cough. The most prevalent differentiating symptom between the COVID-19 and the traditional influenza or other upper respiratory infections is going to be a quicker onset of shortness of breath and a deeper dive into the possibility of pneumonia.
Right.
Does that sound right? Okay.
And those are the people that need to be the ones that need to be evaluated by a healthcare professional, are the ones who are going to be the older population, those with other comorbidities like lung problems, diabetes, things of that nature. My concern from a preparedness standpoint, with what I know from that background, is we're going to be inundated with worried well. Vastly outnumber the people who genuinely need to be seen. It's just going to, and it's going to overwhelm the healthcare facilities because every person is going to be concerned about this. And the majority of people are going to have very mild symptoms and are going to recover, or may not even know that they have symptoms and recover and be fine.
So, in some of the preliminary information I was seeing actually was tied to some of those horrific pictures, you were first seeing coming out of China a couple months ago. And you were seeing dead bodies in hallways and hospitals and people crying. And honestly, a lot of it leads directly back to what Ben just said. Basically, what happened was everybody that didn't feel well suddenly was like, oh my God, maybe I have this new mystery disease, which wasn't even identified as COVID-19 yet. And everybody went to a hospital. The Chinese government said, treat everybody. And again, this is speculation and conjecture mixed with the little bit of facts we're putting together. So I think it's a pretty good story, but I can't tell you it's Bible written, truth here. But what seems to have happened is the government said, treat everybody. The health official said, we don't know exactly what this is. We have to treat it like everyone's going to be a goner. And so China did. And that's actually what led to the problems, is they got so overrun with the walking well that the people that actually needed the hospital beds suddenly were left waiting. And that's where we started seeing the first initial waves of people dying, waiting to get into hospitals. But that's what got reported. Okay, was, people are dying, waiting to get into hospital beds. Well, yeah, when there's only 100,000 beds and there's 200,000 sick people, there's going to be a traffic jam.
Well, let's clarify that. When there's 100,000 beds and there's 150,000 people who don't need to be there and 50,000 sick people, then that's
okay. So you're right. Much better. So let's break down these numbers some more. So we know 80% of these people did not either know they had it or the cases were extremely mild. That leaves us with 20%, which they are classifying as serious. These are the people that require the actual level of treatment that healthcare providers should be giving them. Now, this circles back around to those magic numbers we were talking about a little while ago. No person reported out of China younger than 19 was reported in that 20% or died because of COVID-19. Zero deaths under 19 years old, zero serious cases of infection under 19 years old. So that's the first magic number, is if you're young and healthy without a comorbidity, you're likely going to respond well. The
so
second
stop buying
one
toilet paper.
So stop. No. I'm glad you brought that up. I put a pin in that because I actually saw something interesting about that, and I was like, oh, okay. The second one is 60. 60 years old is where we seem to start having the majority of that 20%. And again, this is based off numbers from the CDC and the World Health Organization. Okay.
Right.
So 60 years old is where they're reporting, hey, you are likely going to start running into speed bumps hard at 60 years old. Okay. And if you don't, that's the problem area you need to be watching. The very risky, and it literally said that in one of the reports, very risky was 80. If you have a patient with 80 and they're testing positive for COVID-19, you probably need to get them into a hospital. Why exactly? I did not see a bunch of specific information that 100% laid out why these people were more affected than others, but it did lay out those ages specifically. Now, back to the toilet paper for a second.
Yes, sir.
Before we go forward. I did see one thing I went, okay, because I was making fun of the toilet paper people too. Because like people were dying, how'd he die? Well, he had 32 cases of water on top of him. I mean, there's,
Right.
But one other person said something and I was like, oh, okay, that kind of makes sense. They said, yeah, they are buying a bunch of toilet paper and water because they don't want to leave their house. And I was like, oh.
To that, I understand, and I don't disagree.
Yes. No, I get it, but I'll be honest, I didn't think about that because all the initial memes, which I laughed at and I went with, was making fun of people because they were reacting like this was a snowstorm.
That's exactly how it feels. Yes, it's going to be a snowstorm. And again,
Yes.
while I don't disagree that you need to be prepared to, shelter in place or self-isolate or whatever the case may be, one case of toilet paper is probably sufficient. 25 cases of toilet paper. I mean, how long are you planning on being home and never leaving your house? Years?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's not the problem, is the media drives clicks. And so if they can sensationalize things, it gets them more clicks, which gets them more paid. And so sometimes that's where that goes. And I'm not saying all media, I'm just saying kind of in general.
No,
And it can,
agreed.
and so then that causes further panic. And then you get people out there buying masks and hand sanitizer and everything else. And then you have healthcare facilities that are having to start rationing stuff out because they can't order it because the general public is purchasing everything.
Yeah, well, the general public has firmly got their head square in their ass on this one. So the problem is first of all, you don't need a mask. Okay, let's talk about what we do know about spreading of COVID-19. So far, we do know it's primarily spread through droplets. Okay, so unless the person is sneezing or coughing directly in your face or within a 6-foot radius, that is going to be likely getting droplets into a mucous membrane, onto your hands, or into your mouth, you are unlikely to be causing the spread. Now, not 100%, but unlikely.
And with that, the CDC does say that 6 feet radius is if they're in that radius for greater than 10 minutes. So,
see, I didn't even read that. Yeah, so
yeah,
not just he walks in the bubble, like he stays in the bubble.
Yes, now, unless they're like sneezing and then you, I guess, catch it with your mouth, which I don't know why the hell you do that, but I mean, but we're talking socially, they have to be within 6 feet of you, remain within 6 feet of you for greater than 10 minutes, and have the disease for you to have an increased risk of contracting the virus.
Now, having said all that, they do think that this virus has a very high shed rate. So part of that is they're still trying to figure out how does this deal with surfaces. Apparently, I don't have exact numbers on how long it lives on surfaces, but they do know it is living for short periods of time. So there is the possibility of, like, if a person sneezes directly onto a surface and you put your hand on it within a reasonable amount of time, there is the possibility of you spreading it to yourself if you don't wash your hands in between.
Right. And what I
However,
was because it's a novel virus, they're still studying it. The CDC has been able to replicate it so they can study it further, which is good news because then we'll have more information on it. But based off of other coronaviruses, they're saying it could last anywhere from a few minutes to a few hours. And we just don't know yet.
We don't know. So again, that's why we're saying wash your hands. Try not to rub your hand on an unknown surface and then eat. Some basic common sense issues. But what you don't need to do is steal a box of masks from your local family medicine office.
True.
Because it's not going to protect you. Okay. Which that happened to us today for the first time. I was like, what happened? It's ridiculous. However, the nurses that are actually, having to be in extreme close proximity to these people while they're starting IVs or giving them baths or whatever, they do need this PPE or personal protective equipment. They do need masks. And you are basically depriving people that actually need it to give yourself a false sense of security. So take a deep breath, firmly plant your hands on both sides of your cheeks, and push until you hear a loud popping noise in your head. Firmly unseats from your asshole, because that's all you guys are doing if you're one of them. I don't think our listeners are those people. I'm just giving you a helpful description to pass along to those people you see doing this shit.
So current CDC guidelines are still that, from a healthcare provider standpoint, that's one of the things that currently the CDC is saying, that we're looking for those patients who have traveled recently to a level 2 or level 3 travel area for the CDC. Currently, those are China, which is a level 3, Iran, which is a level 3, South Korea is a level 3, Italy's a level 3. Japan's a level 2. So any of your patients that have traveled to any of those places recently are the patients that should be a high index of suspicion until proven otherwise for something like this. And hopefully these are patients are as the CDC is recommending and lots of organizations are recommending, to call your provider's office prior to just moseying on in, so that you're not potentially infecting other people.
Yeah. The problem is going to become the care providers providing that first level of screening, because we're going to have a lot of people that, I think I need it. You don't. You live in Omaha. You haven't even been around anybody from outside of Omaha. It's unlikely for you to have it. You probably have a cold. So it's going to be incumbent on us to start making those first level decisions. However, it's good for us to have these types of information of what we're looking for in areas that it's highly prevalent, so that if you do have someone come in, and I know locally we had a student at a very large university report himself. He was like, hey, I just came back from China, and I started having a cold symptoms. I'm not saying I have it. And he literally said that, like, apparently that was the report, is he literally said, I don't know if I have it, but I have cold symptoms. I came from one of these areas. I'm assuming it was China from what I heard. I think I need tested. And they went through the process. And guess what? Things worked the way they were supposed to. So what do you know? Someone used common sense and things happened the way they were supposed to. But unfortunately, that's not what's going to happen for a lot of us. So it's good for you to know and keep updated on information from like the CDC or the World Health Organization, so that when your patients come in, because they're going to come to you, that you have some answers. I'm not expecting you to have all the answers. I certainly don't.
No.
But it's going to be a lot better than them listening to whatever local news station who doesn't. And I want to address that for a second, because we're going to get a lot of that. We're going to get a lot of this from social media and legitimate media, mass media. It's a double-edged sword, because as Ben said, it's driven. They want ratings. Unfortunately, they also have actual healthcare providers trying to come on and spread useful information. So you can't say everything's fake, because then they won't believe the actual people that are coming on there, trying to say, hey, let's use some good, information. However, you can't also tell them, listen to everything, because then the reporter who doesn't know anything and is going to say that you can use oregano oil to cure cancer, you don't want them listening to that guy either. So there's some back and forth here.
Then you have your TV personality healthcare professionals who are sometimes in it for the money as well, and so then may not provide the best information, because again, it drives. We're not doing this to drive clicks or whatever. We're doing this to try to provide information.
Yeah, we're going to get the same 7 clicks, so it doesn't matter to us. So
we're not selling the latest and greatest new cure for COVID-19 by any means.
Speaking of that, there are several people that have nothing to do and are no way affiliated with healthcare. They're religious personalities, like on television and stuff, that are selling stuff and telling people that God told them what to make, and that if they buy this stuff from them, it will either cure them from COVID-19 or prevent them from getting it. But the point is if you are buying something based on the fact that a guy on the television is telling you that he heard it from somebody else and he knows what will protect you, do not buy that stuff.
The gentleman that I know specifically you're speaking of, the New York State Attorney General's
he's been to jail for stuff like this before?
Yes, but the New York State Attorney General's office actually issued a cease and desist to him for providing false information, at least to the citizens of New York, in regards to the colloquial silver, which I think is a good transition into. So for our non-medical people, COVID-19 is a virus. A virus is not something that can be treated with antibiotics.
No.
Every Z-Pack in the world would not cure COVID-19.
You would just pee out a lot of azithromycin. That's all you would do.
It'd be some hellacious diarrhea, which then the toilet paper makes sense, but it's not going to cure anything. So it's very similar to other viruses. So whenever you come into the office and we say, hey, looks like you got a viral upper respiratory infection, symptomatic and supportive care. So what's that mean? That means that where you treat your symptoms, so you treat your fevers and your body aches with Tylenol or NSAIDs or of your choice, and supportive care. So we're going to give you lots, recommend lots of good fluids. You can use cough syrups, things of that nature to kind of help alleviate some of your symptoms. But beyond that, again, the majority of people are going to recover from this. Well, the majority of people are at a very low risk for catching COVID-19. Of those people who do, the majority of them are going to recover with no significant problems.
That is correct. And the 20%, 15 to 20% that we are looking around that are going to have serious complications, the majority of them are at risk for developing some type of pneumonia, which we are able to treat, especially if we catch it early on. So again, this is something that we should be able to handle very quickly and easily if we identify it correctly and everybody stops wearing masks for no reason. Does the mask itself really signify a problem? No. Okay, I'm not going to tell you it is. The problem is that you think that you're protecting yourself by wearing it, and that's not the problem. Okay, so that type of misinformation and that sign to me that you are believing that misinformation is what the problem is. I don't care about the mask. The mask in reality is neither here nor there. The fact that you are unable to make the conscious decision to wash your hands, keep a significant distance, cough into your hand, and then wash it, that's the problem.
Yeah, it's the false sense of security that mask provides you that is not truly there is the problem. So that's why a lot of these places, like you're seeing other countries that are, I love the Howard Stern show. I listen to it pretty frequently. They played a clip this morning of a soccer match in, I think, Iran, and there was no crowd because they didn't allow the crowd. So they were just playing the soccer match. And so you got to hear a goal in a soccer match with no crowd whatsoever. And there was just a smattering of applause from the team instead of like this huge roar that you would generally hear in a soccer match. But that's because if you think about that, you're getting into close contact with a lot of people in a condensed area
100,000 people
for a prolonged period of time. That's why some of those places are eliminating that right now. Same with cruise ships. Currently they're saying don't cruise because you're on a confined area with a large number of people for a prolonged period of time.
Exactly. And so I feel like we're coming towards the end, right? I mean, it feels like we've covered. So I really want to wrap this up with some information contrasting it on, since we talked about a false sense of security, the actual lion that's lurking in the weeds, which is influenza, that everybody's got this new, oh my God, COVID-19. Yeah, well, guess what? COVID-19 sounds scary. You know what is actually scary? Influenza. That's scary. So let me break down a couple numbers from today from the old CDC website. So as of today, 34 million people. By the way, last known in America was 500 of COVID-19. Influenza, 34 million. Of that 34 million, 350,000 cases required hospitalization. And of those, 20,000 cases have resulted in death. 20,000. 20,000. Okay. So that means we've had more people, 3 times as many people hospitalized in the United States by itself. This is not worldwide statistics. This is United States only influenza statistics. In the United States, we've had more people by a 3-to-1 ratio hospitalized than there are COVID-19 cases in the entire world.
What? No, I know.
Yeah.
That was
yeah, no, I know. The death rate, because that's one of the big things. Oh my God, death rate. So the death rate for COVID-19 is hanging around a solid 2%. Some numbers put it up as high as 3%.
Right.
So yeah, you're looking. I even saw one that said 3.5. So fine, we'll give it to him 3.5. So 2 to 3.5%. The current death rate for influenza is 6.9%. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I don't know how they came to that because that math doesn't make sense to me based on the numbers I'm looking at. But I'm sure the CDC has a much greater. But I'm assuming that's like some type of like serious cases that were identified with people that required hospitalizations or had no comorbidities. But the same people that rank the death rate for COVID-19 are ranking influenza at 6.9. Okay, so that's the next number I would like to point out. The last thing I want to tell you about the CDC's update on influenza this season are children. So far this year, children are being hit abnormally hard. As far as adults are going, this is a regular influenza season. So when people are like, oh my God, it's really bad this year. No, it's not. This is a regular season, Karen. So go get your flu vaccine. What this is showing is that this is the worst year for children. We've had the most deaths for children. We're looking at 0 to 4 years of age. This is the highest amount of deaths related to influenza the CDC has on record since the 2009 H1N1 pandemic. It does say that this is the hardest hit for that age group. So, this is almost the exact opposite of the COVID-19, where the younger kids seem to be doing just fine. But influenza, nobody is safe. 0 to 99, it's rated E for everybody. It'll get you. Okay.
Rated E for everybody. That's good. Yeah.
So if you are truly worried about your health or the health of those around you, remember influenza is a much greater threat to you than COVID has ever thought about being.
At least at this point, yes.
I mean, obviously I can't predict what's going to happen 3 months from now.
Right.
When I win my damn Nobel.
You're not getting a Nobel. Some parting thoughts on my end, I would say is, number one, there was a statistician professor or statistics professor at a university that I attended who used to say that there are 3 types of liars. There are liars, there are damn liars, and they're statisticians. You can make statistics say whatever you want it to say. So don't just go off of the numbers that are being posted and say, oh my God, this is the worst thing ever, because you can play around with statistics to get the numbers to say what you want it to say. Secondly, I will say, the CDC is the go-to for problems like this. I can tell you in my preparedness planning, the CDC, your local health departments, your state health departments plan for shit like this every year. Every year they run influenza pandemic drills to be prepared for stuff like this. The CDC, the word disease is in the middle of it. Pay attention to what they're saying.
It's between the two C's.
Yeah, it's right between. That's what the D stands for. The C, disease, C. So pay attention to what they're saying. Pay attention to what your healthcare professionals are saying. Don't freak out. We survived Ebola. We survived the bird flu. We've survived swine flu. We'll survive COVID-19.
So real quick, I'm just reminded of a story. I watched this awesome documentary, and this astronaut's in space, and something goes wrong inside of his suit, and water from his heating and cooling system starts filling into his helmet. And he's talking about trying to stay calm because he's not even in the space station. Like, he's outside or out in the space shuttle. He's like outside. He's got a lot of problems building up pretty quick, going on. And he said something that to this day still sticks with me. And he said one of the mottos that they train the astronauts to think of is, there is no problem so bad that you can't make it worse. Okay. And I'm like, wow, that is pretty profound. Yeah, and it's something I still use to this day. It's something I used in ER. It's something I used in ICU. Because it's true. There is no problem so bad I can't make it worse if I, do something wrong. The point of that being is we are looking at something that maybe isn't the end of the world. And we're looking at something that maybe we're not getting the complete picture from the Chinese government, and this is going to make people turn into zombies. I don't know. Here's what I do know is there is a lot of people spreading a lot of misinformation, and there's a lot of people that aren't listening to the government agencies that are set up to help us get through this, like the CDC. They are the experts. We should be trying to create a cohesive front as healthcare providers. The public's going to be looking to us. We're going to be looking to each other to try and get through this. Okay. If nothing else, through the headache, because let's be honest, so far, this has been a flash in the pan. This hasn't been the evil, dreadnought that everyone says it's going to be. And so far, we know it hasn't been, but it's not over yet. So let's just remember that there's no problem that we can't make worse. Okay, guys. So when you're out there and you're hearing somebody, I'm not saying getting to arguments, but just remember that there are good places for information, and then there's Facebook memes. Maybe this is the time.
Are not always scientifically accurate.
Yes. While Facebook memes can be, hilarious when you're sitting on the toilet, doesn't mean that's where your go-to pile of information should be, coming from. However, exactly. CDC.gov should be. And honestly, this is that time for our listeners that are not in healthcare. Thank you. I'm not saying that you need to point them towards us, but this is maybe that time where you say, hey, I've heard some information on this. Maybe you should check out what the CDC has to say about this.
Yeah.
If you are a healthcare professional, if you don't know, that's okay. Reach out to someone that you think might. That's what we're all here for. We're in this together. And I think if we all work together, even though there's been some hiccups from the national response level, I think we are all handling it pretty well at the state and local levels so far. So keep your heads up, keep your hands clean, and let's try and get through this together. And if you are in one of our foreign countries listening to us, be safe and know that I think the same thing applies the world round. I don't think the CDC cares if you're in South Korea or if you are in New Jersey. They don't. Like, we all want to get through this together, because I think in this new global economy, nothing stays where it's at. And I think Wuhan, if nothing else, the COVID infection proved that.
Yeah.
Like, you're not keeping this out.
No.
So let's all,
with the vast ability to travel worldwide at a rapid rate, as humans, that's going to bring things like novel diseases sometimes. So,
and honestly, some of these people, some of the information showing that they may not even have symptoms for 3 to 5 days. So they're spreading it around for 3 to 5 days prior to having symptoms. I just thought of one person, Bjorn. Bjorn doesn't have to worry.
Actually, I think he does now. I think he's out of Antarctica now.
Oh, Bjorn, you picked the wrong time to come back, man.
Bjorn, wherever you're at, shoot us an email. Tell us where you're at.
Yeah, we want to know, where in the world is Bjorn? That's like my favorite part of the show.
So, on that note, I do want to give a huge shout out and thank you to Falcon 50 for allowing us to use their music. I also need to thank Kevin MacLeod for use of the music that we used on this episode. If you need royalty-free music for your podcast or YouTube video or anything that you happen to be doing, go check out Kevin MacLeod's website. It's filmmusic.io. And on that note, we hope everybody has a wonderful and safe wash your damn hands, quit buying all the toilet paper week.
Hey, everybody, stay safe out there. You don't need to wear a mask.
Unless you're a healthcare provider and you're taking care of a COVID-19 patient. Well, Tom, that's where the episode should have ended. But
Ben, for an even bigger surprise, a special guest to our special episode, we were able to pull some strings, and for 5 questions tonight, we have the one, the only, all the way from Atlanta, Georgia, at the CDC labs, COVID-19 virus itself.
Ni hao. Hello.
What? Hello?
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie, I wasn't expecting such a normal response.
What?
From a...
What were you expecting? Hang on a second. Sorry, are you there?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, we're still here. Yeah. We appreciate you taking time to visit with us and answering our questions real quick here. Because we figure that people want to know more about you.
My pleasure. I'm willing to share myself.
Obviously.
All over the world.
Yes. I especially like to make sure that I introduce myself to children so that I can have little vectors running around.
I also hear you're especially popular with the elderly.
Yeah, I mean, well, if I want to stay alive, I like children because they don't show very many symptoms and they give it to the elderly, and then, unfortunately, I learned that if I give it to the elderly, I don't last another day. So I gotta keep it going in the kids. I had to cancel school, so
Kind of harsh there.
Yeah, dark and ominous for such a pleasant and upbeat voice.
I'm sorry.
So,
I noticed you're sneezing and coughing a lot there, COVID. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. I was just,
well, we have some music that we usually play before 5 questions, so I'm going to play that, and then we'll try to find out some more about you.
all right, no problem.
Join us on a journey into the inner psyche of our guest as we ask 5 questions. All right, so COVID there. Is it okay if I call you COVID?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Didn't know if you had a nickname you preferred.
Oh no, I was reading something about, so we also infect animals, but then the World Health Organization thought it would be smart to let all the dogs go, and I just thought, who let the dogs out?
It never stops with the COVID-19, huh?
Yeah. World Health Organization, who let the dogs out?
Nicely played there, COVID. All right, well, COVID, question 1. What's your favorite medical word?
Oh, does it have to be medical word? Because I really like the media. Medical word.
I mean, I think we'll allow it in this case, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not going to wash my hands? Oh, it can't be a statement.
Yeah. Maybe persistent cough.
Oh, yeah, persistent cough. Yes. I like the word virus, actually. Because, it's not treatable with antibiotics.
So the Z-Pack does nothing to you is what you're saying.
Correct.
What, COVID, do you get a laugh when people ask for antibiotics when they're infected with you?
I kind of giggle a little bit because, they think it's going to kill them, but it just makes me stronger.
Kind of a bitch. So, question 2 there, COVID. If you could do any job in the world other than what you currently do, what would it be?
I was thinking about, like a bat scientist. That would be good. Yep. Bat scientist.
Well, I guess it's...
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, maybe that's better than like the greeter at Disneyland.
Oh, I like that.
Oh, wow. Question 3 there, COVID.
Yeah.
Back to your first ride. Was it pretty stylish or was it kind of a rolling turd, so to speak?
Honestly, I cannot remember. But I do know that I got a ride to Wuhan, and we went to the market there. And that's where it all began. I met patient 0 with love at first sight, and there we are.
Was it a good day? Like, were you happy after that?
Absolutely. Are you kidding me?
It's really a Beauty and the Beast kind of story there. Ooh. All right, well, question 4. If your house is on fire and everyone, including pets, are safe, what's the one thing that you want to get out of your house?
Toilet paper for sure. Going
Especially
really
now.
high right now. I'll let the hand sanitizer stay because that can kill me. And it also is highly flammable. So
You're gonna add to the fire.
I was saying, I didn't think COVID was going to be such a safety precaution person.
Who knew?
I'm the hand sanitizer stays because it's more flammable. I'll take the TP because I was just thinking maybe if I could find a way to get into toilet paper, then everybody would have me.
I get it now.
Valid point.
What was I thinking? Yeah. Wow.
I can't have hand sanitizer; it'll kill me. Gotta stay.
Yeah, Tom. Jeez.
For once, I find myself on the opposite side. So you got me, COVID.
Oh, it's the first time for everything.
Question 5. You have $9.18 in your little viral pocket. What all do you buy?
You know what? The really big bag of Skittles that are shareable. Because one, I can put myself on all of them and share them with my friends, and they taste good. Shareable size M&M's, final answer. Or Skittles.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah.
Both delicious and devious at the same time.
And now Skittles stocks are going to drop drastically as people stop buying them.
I like the
COVID.
pink Skittles.
Pink Skittles? Are you talking about Starburst?
No, they have pink Skittles.
I think like the not the originals. I think it's like a different.
Yeah.
Oh.
Like tropical or something.
Gotcha.
So, all right, and COVID. I just want to add one question. Normally we don't do this, but I feel like we have a
special
connection.
guest.
Yeah, special guest. We're going to make an exception. So I'm seeing on Facebook that there's these asinine posts going around saying that if people get COVID in their mouth, as long as they're drinking lots of fluids, they're going to just swallow that. It's going to go down into their belly, and the acid down there is going to destroy COVID. Do you want to dispute that? I mean, where do you feel about that?
What doesn't kill me makes me stronger, and that acid will not kill me. No, absolutely not. However, if you have asthma or you're the elderly, you ain't got nothing on me.
It's been an interesting interview, Tom. Oh, yeah, Tom, you're in trouble now.
No.
So, hold on a second.
I'm coming for you, Tom.
Say that again, COVID.
I said I'm coming for you. Keep that shit up. You're about to get a runny nose.
I wouldn't knock COVID, Tom.
But COVID, I'm not in one of your risk factor pools. Are you going to make a special Tom category?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
See? Yet another Nobel Prize coming my way.
Well, COVID, is there anything that you want to add? And we'll let you get back to your. I'm sure you're a very busy virus.
Yeah, this social distancing stuff ain't got nothing on me. People like to socialize.
So, are you upset that the South by Southwest festival is shut down?
Yeah, but people got to get out eventually. If I have to lay low, I'm pretty smart. I know what to do.
It's kind of an ominous warning.
I mean, bingo. Hello.
Bingo.
Bingo, and so do I.
COVID. I've also noticed that you've been sneezing and coughing a lot during this interview. Are you feeling okay?
So sneezing is actually a rare symptom of me, but it's how I get it out further within 6 feet. You know what I mean? Like I gotta get it over there.
I just didn't know if maybe you had caught something.
No. That's how I'm giving myself to people.
Make sure you're not getting like influenza or anything. I mean,
we want to make sure you were safe.
Yeah, I got my flu shot.
See, even COVID knows to get your flu shot.
Correct.
Well, Tom, we're gonna let COVID get back to doing what she does. Apparently.
Yep.
Apparently, she's got an interview very soon.
Yep.
Like CNN or someone, I'm sure.
I'm about to find out if Donald Trump gets spray tan or not.
On that note, we're going to end the show again. I hope everybody has a great week.
Hey, everybody, stay safe out there. You too, COVID.
Tom, I'll talk to you later.
Practice swearing just to pass the time. Lately, I see why.